As soon as Jesus and the disciples left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. And this is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. As those of you who have been around me for a while have figured out, I'm a bit of a clown. No, not the funny nose and face paint kind of clown. I'm actually kind of afraid of those clowns, but that's another sermon. No, I mean I'm always quick with a joke. And dare me to do something embarrassing for a good cause, I'll probably take you up on it. Case in point. About 10 years ago, I was serving as a solo pastor at a church in Iowa. They had chosen as their vacation Bible school curriculum that year a great program called Weird Animals. Maybe we've even done it here. Anybody know? Okay, well, Weird Animals features a goofy zookeeper named Dr. Paws, P-A-W-S, get it? Who, at least in my mind, looked like a Steve Irwin reject, complete with Australian accent and crocodile hunter shirt. Well, that year I had the privilege of being asked to play Dr. Paws, and as you might have guessed, I did it with gusto. I mean, I really hammed it up, even to the point of during the wrap-up at the event on the Sunday service after the event, I even fell over backward, landing on my pride. You see, as I said, I am always ready, maybe even a bit eager, to make a fool of myself for Christ, if it's called for. And I guess it's because I take Paul's words in the passage that we heard from 1 Corinthians very seriously. He said, "I have become all things to all people, that I might by all means save some." I decided long ago that nothing, not even my pride, was worth getting in the way of sharing this enormously good news about Jesus. Which makes me sound like a really good evangelist, doesn't it? Wish I could say that was always the case, though. There have been times, and still are, if I'm honest, when for whatever reason, I just don't feel comfortable around certain people, and so I miss the opportunity to tell them about Jesus. Now, I think I've shared with you before that I used to be that way with people who have tattoos. I used to judge them and actually felt kind of scared around them. Now, I know that's foolish, but it took me a long while to get over that. And what got me over it was actually spending time with people with tattoos. And that's when I discovered that they are no more and no less than any other people. And that I could love them as God loves them. Not in spite of their skin art, but even maybe because of it. Because that's just simply part of who they are. And I think that epiphany, and after all, we are still in the season of epiphany for anyone who's paying attention, I think that epiphany is what I bring to the table now when I read this passage from Paul's letter. You see, Paul was saying that he proclaims the gospel not for any brownie points, but simply because he was commanded to do it. And because it was a divine command, he never charged anyone for his evangelism. Now let me stop here and say I truly appreciate the salary that you all pay us. Hey, I have a mortgage. Not sure if Paul did. But, folks, I could make money in other endeavors, you know that. I do this preaching thing because God told me to do it. No glory there. But with this command comes the challenge to lose myself, or in Paul's words, make myself a slave to all, so that I can win more of them, as he says. In fact, Paul fancied himself a bit of a chameleon, saying that to the Jews, he became a Jew. To those under the law, he became as one under the law, although he knew he was free. To those outside the law, in other words, the Gentiles, he became like them, although he considered himself under Christ's law. And to the weak, he even became weak. Now, does this sound to you like maybe he was a bit inauthentic, though? You could interpret it that way, that he had no self-differentiation, right, Bruce? He's into that phrase. But instead caved in to whatever anyone wanted him to be. But you know, I don't think that's what Paul was saying at all. In fact, I think he was extremely self-differentiated, Bruce. I think he knew exactly who he was and what he stood for. And that's important to point out because it's essential for those of us who want to follow Paul's example. He knew who he was, warts and all, but he chose to put all of who and what he was under Christ's command, to let Christ rule him, serve through him, and thus save any who would accept the good news. He did it, as he said, all for the sake of the gospel, so that he may share in its blessings. And so I have to ask myself, if Paul did that, and he is arguably one of the best evangelists ever to have existed, if Paul did that, what would it look like for LCC if we all took to heart what he did? I mean, look around. We'd all like to see more people here, I know. And folks, we have fantastically good news to share, so why aren't they coming in droves? Well, maybe the answer to that, or at least one answer to that, is that they don't feel welcome here. Now, before you get all upset with me for saying that, I am not saying that we're not nice people. We are nice people. Well, at least most of the time. Some of us are grumpy sometimes. But, you know, I'm not talking about you, Bruce. He's not even paying attention. And hopefully, we are especially nice in church, as we should be. But, are we the kind of place that anybody, no matter what they look like, what their political beliefs are, what their personal lives are or are not, are we the kind of place that they would feel that they could fit right into? That's the question. And I know that's tough. You can't please everybody. It's something that I learned early on in my ministry. But you know what? What's really important isn't pleasing everybody. What's important is pleasing Christ. And the only way that I know how to do that is to love. And here's what I'm going to suggest. If love is our MO, modus operandi, if love is our guiding principle and our only purpose, then we will be open to all and willing to risk it all for the sake of Christ's love. So what might that look like here? Well, I can point to the growing success of our second service as an example. Folks, I am a high church kind of gal. Bells and smells, that's me. So when the idea of doing a really informal service with rock praise songs came up, I was nervous, maybe even resistant. But I have become all things to all people. And so I threw myself into it. And I discovered I actually like it. It's different, for sure, but it meets the needs of people where and as they are, especially the kids who we encourage to be who they are while they explore and celebrate who Christ is for them and their parents. But there are a lot of ways outside of the walls of this church that we can follow Paul's example and be all things to all people for the sake of the gospel. And I think that all starts with our attitudes. I know I had to lose a lot of my judgmental opinions in order for me to make progress on that point. And I'm not saying that I don't still have opinions, but I try hard to see them through the lens of Christ's love. To see not the judgment, but the person for whom Christ died. Because when I do that, I can't help but feel grateful that Christ gave me a chance, even though I deserve judgment too. And again, I know we are nice people, but I think we can do more. I think we can if we want to be serious about sharing the gospel. I think we can lose our inhibitions a little bit and the polite masks that we wear. I think that we can and perhaps should, at times, maybe fall flat on our, well, you know what, for the sake of the gospel, in fact. See, what if, and this is just, a thought experiment, what if instead of worrying about the budget and how we're going to increase pledges next year, which, Dave, are all good and worthy pursuits, I want to make that clear, but what if instead of wringing our hands on those things, we instead became more intentional about our welcoming? What if the people we work with, for example, heard us talking about how grateful we are that Christ loves and accepts us with all our own imperfections, instead of complaining about what we see wrong in the church or why we're worried about its future? It's putting a positive spin on things, friends. What I'm saying is that if we so totally lost ourselves in the Great Commission that Christ gave us, remember, to make disciples of all people? What if we so totally lost ourselves in that we simply met people where they are and spent time getting to know and love them? See, I guarantee if we do that, people will want to know why we are that loving and joy-filled. See, they don't get a lot of that, I've seen it in my own ministry, folks. It's absolutely the best way to share the good news, to live our lives as if sharing that good news was all that mattered. That's how Jesus did it. He went to where the people needed him. He went to Peter's house, and immediately he went to see Peter's sick mother-in-law, and he healed her. And when Jesus was tired at the end of the day, he didn't send away the crowds telling them that they should have come earlier, or maybe they were only interested in being healed of their physical afflictions and not of their spiritual needs. No, he simply met their needs for healing right where they were. And even when he was praying in the morning, trying to recharge his own spiritual batteries, and Simon came to him and said, "Everyone's searching for you." He didn't shoo him away and criticize him for not respecting boundaries. No, he told him that his whole reason for being was to share the good news. Kind of like he calls us to do too, huh? You might remember Jesus hung out with tax collectors and sinners. He didn't condemn the woman taken in adultery, but he saved her and called her to a better life. He actually reached out and touched a leper in order to heal him. He didn't shy away from anybody. He met people on their own terms and loved them into the kingdom. It's a good model, I think. So how might we, like the picture on the screen, add a few stripes to our hides so we elephants can love more zebras into the kingdom? You see, there's even a bird with stripes on top of that elephant. That's awesome. Or to go with my original idea, how might we allow ourselves to be silly, to even fall on our backsides if necessary, to love all the weird animals, which are all of us, of course, into the kingdom? The two greatest evangelists of all time, Jesus and his pal Paul, showed us the way to do it, friends. Become all things to all people. Love people as they are and tell them about how Jesus did that for you. Show them that his love really does make a difference in your attitudes, your beliefs, and your behavior. And be open to being surprised by the love that you might receive in return. I know I have received as much and even more love than I've ever given out. when I've simply met people where they are and let them be who they are with me. And as I said, that's what Jesus did for Paul and for me and for all of you. And it's what Jesus commands all of us to do for each other, so that the good news of his transforming love can sink deep into hearts that are so desperately in need of love and acceptance. Be all things to all people, and don't be surprised when all people start checking us out here at LCC. Amen. Our hymn of the day, I think, speaks powerfully to that.